welcome back to our YouTube channel. In today's video, we are talking about all the things that advisors need to do at the end of the school year to wrap up and go and enjoy their summer. So the first thing that you need to do towards the end of the school year is plan yearbook distribution. We made a whole YouTube video about this, so I'm not going to go into detail. There's a lot of logistics, but one of the key takeaways from that video that I harped on is prior proper planning prevents poor performance. If you've heard me in a workshop, you've heard me say this, you know how I want it tattooed on my arm. But the stress goes away when you walk into distribution day with a plan. Even the most stressful things aren't that stressful because there's a procedure in place. So definitely, if you haven't seen that video, check it out and plan distribution with a lot of intentionality, and it really won't be that bad. It'll actually be fun. Then you also want to host a celebration. So we called ours a banquet because we decided that we wanted it to be really fancy. It wasn't super expensive. We did have it at a local golf course banquet room, and so, but it was about $15 a person for food. They let us have the banquet room for free because we did it on a weeknight, and so we just made it fancy. Like, it wasn't fancy, but we just dressed up, and therefore it was. And so that's my editors wanted to rewear their prom dresses one year, and then it became a tradition. So it doesn't have to be fancy. It could be laser tag, it could be donuts, it could be painting pottery. Like, it doesn't have to be anything crazy, but you want to give your students the opportunity to really celebrate everything that they did to make that yearbook happen, and the newspaper and the photography and really all the student publications together. It's a lot of work, and I'm sure you know that how stressful it can be, and those poor little kiddos, they're just as stressed out, and so they are also in other organizations, and they have homework, and they have teenage relationships and teenage hormones, and they just deserve a chance to really celebrate that, right? So we called ours a banquet, and we gave out serious awards like Photographer of the Year, Story of the Year, Spread of the Year, Editor of the Year, Staff Member of the Year, New Staff Member of the Year. Like, anything we could give an award for, we did. As well as like paper plate awards. We didn't actually do ours on paper plates. We had all the editors give all the non-editors awards, and they were like silly things like inside jokes, most likely to forget their memory card at a football game, all the little like inside jokes that you get over the year. We would also have a jar that we would put little memories in throughout the year, so we didn't forget when it came time for banquet. And some people put these literally on paper plates and like decorate them all cute, and they give those out. I will say, if you have parents come to your banquet, just be cognizant of what those awards are, because sometimes they don't think they're funny because they weren't there and they don't understand it. And sometimes kids can be kind of hurt if all they got was a silly award and it was also kind of like a dig at them for getting their memory card. And so just like, use discretion and be aware of like sensitivities, because sometimes parents especially don't really get it. And then there's the Quill and Scroll induction. So if you're not a member of Quill and Scroll, you definitely should be. It's an honor society for high school journalists. And so there's a really beautiful script when you induct them, and you can give them a pin and a certificate, and they become a member. And then they also have opportunities to apply for scholarships through that. And it was always just a really good way to induct them into this, honor society that is really a big deal. They worked really hard to be inducted. It's not just journalism related merits. It's also related to their GPA, and so it's definitely an honor to be inducted, so we made a big deal of it at the banquet. And then we also made a really big deal out of editor handover, and so we used candles in our Quill and Scroll induction, and then we also used them for the editor handover. And so the former editor would light the candle of the new editor, and they would blow their own candle out. It was very dramatic, but it was really fun, and it just signified like, hey, this is yours now. Like, I'm handing this to you. It's your responsibility. There were a lot of tears involved, but it was so fun to really see them own that responsibility and take it. And it's not just a flippant title. Like, they are the editors of the yearbook. They hold this publication in their hands, and it kind of also just made them take it more seriously, because it was a really sweet kind of little ceremony. Then obviously you want to honor your seniors, even if they haven't been on staff for longer than just this one school year. We obviously want to celebrate those seniors and send them off with well wishes. And so we talk about their accomplishments in school, their accomplishments on staff, how long they've been on staff, if they held any leadership positions. We had editors and managers, so like there were a lot of leadership positions, and a lot of the seniors did hold some. And then we would talk about where they're going to college and what they plan to major in and what they want to do when they grow up, and really take the time to celebrate those seniors. Sometimes yearbook is the only, or newspaper is the only activity that these kiddos are in, and so they don't really have any other opportunity to be celebrated from a school perspective other than actual graduation. And so it's a really special time to, talk about them and celebrate them as an individual versus just a part of a yearbook staff. And then you want to celebrate your accomplishments. So if you've submitted for any critiques or awards, or you've been nominated for a pacemaker or a crown, or you've been having any like state awards or literally anything that you can celebrate it at the banquet. Do it as a big recap of the entire year. And then we also, this was really our favorite part, was a big, long, emotional slideshow of the year. So we would have video clips and pictures and music playing. Some of it was like sad and somber, and some of it was really happy and joyful. Just a really big slideshow of moments from the year of during class and field trips and workshops and just all the funny things that happened throughout the year. And then we'd also have some notes from our seniors in there that they would record a little kind of 10 to 15 second goodbye to the staff, or the younger staff wishing the seniors well wishes, thanking them for their leadership. And it was just a really special slideshow that the editors put together for the staff and for each other. And we played that, and it was about 10 minutes long. And then we also played it in class the next day just because they wanted to cry about it. So, and then towards the end of the year, you also want to submit your book for critique. So there are a ton of ways to get critiques on your book. CSPA, NSPA, JEA, every organizations, your state organizations, they all have ways to get feedback on your book. And there's a ton of different deadlines. And so you really want to do your research and think about which organizations you want to submit your book to and which ones have the earliest deadlines, and make sure you get those books in before you leave for summer. Some of the deadlines are over the summer, so you don't want to wait till fall because those need to be submitted before you leave, and you don't want to have to do it in the summer. And then also, I will say that sometimes I hear from especially new advisors say, oh, I can't. I'm not going to submit for critique. Please do. Please submit for critique. Even if you get that thing back and it is just riddled with red pen and it is like you did everything wrong, it's okay. I know that that's really hard to see. You don't even have to show your students, but it gives you a baseline, it gives you a roadmap, it gives you feedback on how to improve for next year. And I know that can be overwhelming, and I really only advise you to pick like maybe 2, maybe 3 things to work on each year, but at least you have that feedback about your actual publication to move forward for the future. It's really hard and intimidating to do that, I know, but it is worth it. It's worth the money, it's worth the time, and it's worth the little emotional hit it takes to receive those comments in order to improve. I'm a big believer in continuous improvement, and I know that not everything I do is perfect and good and well received and anything. And you'll notice in my, the planner, for instance, I am constantly asking, please tell me what you hate, tell me what you love, tell me what you use, tell me what you don't, because that is so valuable to me to be able to create a better product. And even if there's a page in there that I just loved and I thought every advisor was going to use it and I thought it was the best thing in the world, if teachers didn't use it and it's a waste of space in the planner, I'm taking it out, and I don't know that if I don't get that feedback, and it might hurt my feelings because I liked that page, but at the end of the day, I'm doing it for advisors that are going to use it, and I want that feedback. So in the same way, you're making your yearbook for your student body, and the better your yearbook is, the more they're going to enjoy it and buy it and purchase it, and so it's worth getting that critique, even in the very, very beginning of your advising career, to get that feedback to make those improvements. All right, so then you want to finalize your staff. If you haven't already, typically at this point towards the end of the year, you might have already done this, but you want to use this season where the yearbook is done to recruit new staff members. You can go to prerequisite classes like Photo J or photojournalism or commercial photography, or if you have a journalism intro class in Texas, it's called Journalism 1. Or you can go to English teachers and ask for recommendations. You can go to art teachers, graphic design, video editing. There's so many programs and classes that you can recruit really great students from, and you can do it intentionally. You can also talk to the junior highs, the middle schools in your area, and talk to their yearbook staffs and see what their plans are for the future. Sometimes it was required that they take a prerequisite class as a freshman before they were allowed on staff, and so that's very normal and common, but at least you have them in the trajectory and the pathway, and you've already made a connection with them, so when they get to your staff as a 10th grader, you'll already have a little bit of a connection. You can also straight up send invitations. Be like, hey, you were recommended for yearbook staff by this teacher. If you're interested, here's an application. With that, I will say that applications and interviews are a great idea. I always had a really, really long long application. On my website, if you search staff application, there is a template that you can use. It has pictures that they can use to write captions. It has them write a sample story. It has them do a bunch of different things. And my thought behind it was, if they're not willing to go through the work to fill out this application, they're not going to do well on staff, because the staff work is a lot more than this, right? And so it is a little bit more work to go through the applications. And if you get a lot of applications, I would always hold interviews. And so that way you really limit your staff to people that you know have that commitment. Unfortunately, I would rather have 12 or 10, 6 really great students than 30 that are lazy slackers. And so sometimes you have to weed those out. And sometimes the people that you reject are people that are just really overcommitted. If you have the head cheerleader who's also in band and also in AP classes and also has a part-time job, she's probably not going to have time for yearbook, and yearbook's probably going to be the last thing on her list. So you kind of have to make those decisions. And even though that would be a great student to have on your staff, clearly they're committed and a very studious and organized student, they're just too busy. And so really looking at their commitment level and why they want to be on staff, if you have a lot of applicants, is a really good way to narrow it down, because you definitely can have too many kids on staff. And if you have too many and they're just sitting around doing nothing or distracting the kids who are working, that's not good. So you want to finalize your staff. Then you want to appoint and announce editors. Very similar to the staff application, I have an editor application and an interview process for sure for the editors. It was always a very competitive process to select editors. There's typically a couple of standouts who you know are going to be editors. Then there's a couple of kids who you know are going to apply to be editors but might not have the experience or the commitment or the time or whatever to be an editor, and they might not just know what it takes. And then you might have some kids that really want to be editors, but they really need to grow into it, all across the board. And it's a very difficult process. It was for me, because I love all these kids like they're my own children. I don't even have children, so they were all I had. But it's really hard to make those decisions. But it breeds excellence when you require them to really evaluate what they're going to bring to the table. And when you don't just hand out editor positions willy-nilly, they come to expect and respect the position more because they know that person earned it. And it takes some time to build that into your program, but at the end of the day, a really strong editor is going to make a really strong yearbook. Then I like to host what I call the first meeting, but it's really just like a welcome social. We had ice cream, we had a little scavenger hunt to find out who their big was, because we had bigs and littles, and we just talked about what it's like to be on yearbook. People shared their experience, and the current editors were not allowed to come. It was only next year's staff, and it's the very first taste of the current staff meshing with the new staff, and it also gives them just a little couple of minutes to bond before yearbook workshop or camp over the summer, because it's really scary to go walk into yearbook camp and be a sophomore on campus or on staff and know nobody, and be on this strange location on a college campus or whatever and be with strangers. And so this gave them a little frame of reference to know each other. And then also I got them all in a group chat at that time, because I want them to be able to start bonding through that. And so if they met each other at this first meeting, then they can kind of continue that conversation, and then they can have a little bit of someone that they know when they get to yearbook camp in the summer. Okay, next, I know you probably do not want to think about next year's book. You're like, what the heck? We just finished last year's book. I can't possibly think about next year. I get it. I know. But you want to keep that momentum going, and you want to remember things about this past year going into next year. So you want to start thinking about what your theme is going to be. If you wait till August, September to start talking about theme, it's not the end of the world. If that's what you did last year, don't hate yourself for it. Don't beat yourself up about it. But the earlier you start talking about theme, the better, because it's an evolution. The first iteration of your theme is likely not going to be how it ends up at the end of the year. And so the more time you give yourself, the more lead time, the more time editors have over the summer to think about it, you have time to think about it, things can marinate, things will shift and change. And so you want to give yourself that time. So what I always had myself do was the kids who were coming back on staff, so not the graduating seniors, but the returners, they would all have to do what's called a theme packet. And they would have to decide on a theme, decide on colors, come up with some sample layouts, come up with spin-offs for each section name, and really robustly describe what theme they thought we should do for next year. And that helped us, one, we voted on the theme from those theme packets, but also looking at them like, what do we actually think we could do? Sometimes we combined themes, sometimes we combined ideas or took ideas from here or there, but overall, like, it just let me see kind of where the kids are thinking, and it was very clear too, like, what themes would work and what themes won't. So once you decide on what that is, I would have them together start working on a theme guide template. And so on the website, you can download this. There's also a YouTube video about it, but this is a template in Canva that they can start to kind of build out their theme throughout the year. And it has them go through everything. So it's like a mood board, their actual theme logo, which might turn it into like a cover idea, all the words and phrases and theme related content that they can come up with like on the fly, you know, to use for headlines. The mood and tone of the theme, the personality of the theme, the colors, how the colors pair together, the fonts, the spin-offs, and then the last four over here, these are layouts that they can come up as like templates that they would use. It's all using fake pictures and fake words, but just to give the staff an idea of like, here's where I would go with it. And then that is also, the better they can explain it, the more likely they are to have a really great theme that the staff can actually create. So this is what I would have them work through for their for their individual one that you vote on. And then once they decide what the theme is, then have them work through it together and really work together to build it out. And then I would meet with your rep. So in the end of the year, you're probably like, I'm finally done. I will meet with my rep next year. I love them, but I don't want to see them until fall. But I think you should meet with them at least one more time. So what you want to do before you leave for the summer is review your budget and set your deadlines. So if you're able to set your deadlines, at least a rough idea of your deadlines, you're able to work backwards and start planning your lessons and your content and your mini deadlines leading up to those big deadlines. And so what I like to do is set them with my rep, and then I will give myself a week before that. I will give my editors a week before that, and then the week before that is when the actual content is due from the students, and then they have like a week to edit, and then it goes to editors, and then me, and then backwards. But I don't want my students to know those deadlines. Like, I want to be in control of them, so that way I make sure I meet them, but we still have a little wiggle room. But I would like to meet those. I would like to know what those are as soon as possible, so that way I can plan out my year over the summer when I start to get to PD and stuff like that. Also review your budget. So you want to make sure that you know if you are in the red and you're going to owe money, how many ads you're going to need to sell to make up for that, what the plan is to get out of the red. If you have an excess of money, where is that money going? Are you going to receive a check back, or is it going to stay in your yearbook account? Can you buy things with your yearbook account? Do you have any incentives on your contract that you need to purchase, like cameras or iPads or memory cards or whatever? And then if you want to do something really cool or crazy or unique with your cover, do you have the budget for it? Do you need to fundraise? You know, you really need to know where you're at for next year, right now, before you head out for summer. If you don't get a chance to do this, it's not the end of the world, but you do want to do it as soon as possible. And if you can, you want to do this before yearbook workshop, because a lot of times you won't have access to the software and stuff if you haven't done this sort of stuff first. So just talk to your rep. It can be a really casual, quick conversation, but you want to kind of just know where you're at. Then, because you've set your deadlines, you want to create a rough production calendar. It's not going to be like set in stone. We're not doing anything, chiseled in stone here, but you want to have a rough idea of where things need to come in the year. So you need to know when sports seasons start and stop. You need to know when your deadlines are in correlation to that. If your spring deadline is like really early next year for some reason, but like softball and soccer and baseball is like right up against it, then you need to talk to those coaches about getting their group picture early. So the more information you have before the school year even ends this year to go into next year, the more you are armed with knowledge to be able to go and have those conversations next year proactively versus retroactively being like, hey, I just realized my deadline's tomorrow. You don't have your group picture, and we've only had pictures of your scrimmage, and the game tomorrow is rained out. So like, what's the plan? And they're like, what? Like, I should have known this ahead of time. The more you can plan out the production calendar, the better, but know that like at this point, it's still really flexible. You also want to include things like summer bonding activities. I would always have my editors be in charge of a couple of bonding activities for the staff, like so one in June, one in July, one in the morning, one at night, just so people had options. People are traveling, they're not mandatory, but ice cream with the staff, just something that I didn't even go to. It was just something for the staff to get to know each other and have a little bit of an activity before or after camp. And then I also planned a boot camp, which happened the week before teachers went back to school. And so that we covered writing, photography, design, all the things that they would have learned in like Journalism 1 or if they've been on staff before as a refresher. And I was there and I jumped in when needed, but my editors really taught that. And in the planner, there's actually a boot camp checklist, and so that gives you a big long list of topics that you can cover at your boot camp. I would just give those to my editors and be like, hey, here's what you need to teach, and they will put together lessons and put together slideshows, and I will help, obviously, and make sure they cover everything they need, but it also helps your editors learn how to lead, and it helps your newbies see them as editors. So it's a really good idea to have your editors teach that. All right, then you need to take a look at your classroom. So you're probably sitting in it and you're like, wow, this is crazy. It's a mess. It's never been messier and I don't even know what direction is up. So it's time for some spring cleaning. As you're taking down all your posters, you're redoing your bulletin boards, all of that, it's time to declutter. If you have a bunch of old publications, figure out what to do with them. It's really hard to get rid of them. But if you literally have hundreds of yearbooks in your room that are never getting picked up again and they're years and years and years old, if they're over 4 years old, then that's what I'm talking about. If they're within 4 years old, then those kids are still in school, so they're more likely to come get them. If you can distribute them, do. But if you can't, sometimes it becomes a fire hazard because there's so many in there. So it is time to recycle them, and you can have your students do that. So that way the manual labor isn't on you. But look for cameras that are old. Look for, just clutter. Get rid of stuff that you don't need in your room. A clean space is a happy space. And I know teachers are kind of notorious for like, well, I might need that later. I get it. I totally get it. But a clean space is a lot easier to work in, and you'll have more room to be creative if you have a clean, organized space next year. All right, then we need to do equipment inventory. So that's taking all your cameras, all your lenses, all your memory cards, your chargers, your batteries, your lens caps, your bags, your laptops, your iPads, all the things, and making sure you have a good count of everything, making sure you have everything turned back in. I've had many lenses go missing, just happen to be at someone's house. Lens caps, it's like they don't even exist. I don't know where they go. And make a list of things you need to reorder. So typically we're reordering memory cards, we're reordering lens caps, we're reordering batteries. Sometimes batteries just like start puffing up. They get too old. They've been charged too many times. So you need to buy a couple of new of those, a couple of new chargers. Look at your budget and look at your activity account, see what's left, and see what you can purchase for next year. If you do that now, you'll have all summer for those items to come in, and you won't have to worry about waiting for them in the fall because they're already there. And then you can also look at repairs and replacements. So sometimes cameras are worth repairing. Cameras and lenses can go to a camera shop either locally, or you can send them back to the manufacturer and they will repair whatever's happened. So like if you dropped a lens or a lens isn't fitting in the camera body anymore, they can repair those kinds of things. Sometimes, depending on how old the camera is or how old the lens is or how bad the repair is, it doesn't make sense financially to do that. So you might have to just replace them. But your district probably has a procedure in place for how to do that. And so you can kind of process those things now, again, so you don't have to wait for them in the fall. You're ready to go fresh. You have all your good equipment in the fall. I also take this time to like clean all the lenses, clean all the cameras, do a really deep, thorough clean of everything, and just make sure it's all not dusty and crusty from being used and abused all year. Okay, so then you're going to plan for next year's setup. So every year I would kind of come up with a new and improved system for camera checkout, the equipment management. So like, how are our batteries recharged? How are our memory cards handled? And then also signing up for events. So there is no perfect system for any of those things. It depends on the equipment you have, the storage facilities you have, the capabilities of your technology. Sometimes, like some people have them where they have like a barcode scanner. It depends on your student, like how many students you have that are using the equipment, how often it needs to be turned over. Like there's so many variables. So I don't have like here's a tried and true, like one-size-fits-all solution. But what I can say is it works when you have a system. Whatever that system ends up looking like, as long as students have a very clear expectation, like they will meet that expectation. So look at how you did it this past year and make adjustments if needed. Honestly, I made adjustments every single year on how cameras were stored, how they were checked out, and how they were recharged. Like it was just a whole mess every single year. And so I reinvented it every single year because things changed. One year I ended up putting command strips on plug outlet strips on the wall, and we charged our cameras that way because we didn't have space on the counter, so I put it vertically. That actually worked out pretty well, but you have to do what works for you. I wish there was a one-size-fits-all solution, but unfortunately, it depends on all those factors. So with that though, kind of think through, what do you need to purchase? So again, knowing your budget and where you're at, buy things now so that way you'll have them and they come in over the summer, and you'll have them when school starts. All right, then really quickly, you want to think about back to school. You do not want to be thinking about this in the summer. So the sooner you can do this, the better. So you don't have to come to the school and figure it out. Typically, that just means a first day of school packet flyer. If your first day of school packets are digital, put some sort of advertisement in there. If you have some sort of way of getting a message out from a principal, like you want to talk about yearbook sales in that first day of school packet. Parents are paying attention to that. You have their captive audience right there, and they're doing a bunch of stuff. They're filling out registration, they're paying for t-shirts, they're buying homecoming tickets, they're buying prom tickets, even buy the yearbook, like get that information in that first day of school information to the parents. That will sell quite a few yearbooks. And then also there's usually like a before school event where they pick up their schedules, pick up their textbooks, pick up their novels they're reading, signing up for clubs. You want to have a yearbook table there. So make sure you're aware of that date. Make sure you kind of plan your travel around it. Make sure you're there that day. It's usually right before school starts. But make sure that you have yearbook representation there. And then you also want to make sure that you plan out who are your first day of school photographers going to be. You might not use those photos, but you definitely want them to be taken because there's no other way to redo that. Like if you miss it, like the first day came and went. Also, kids look really good on the first day of school typically, and they're not usually as scared to be in front of the camera. They don't start dressing like trash cans until like day 2 or 3. Self-admittedly, I'm not calling kids trash cans. They call themselves that. And at the very least, even if you don't end up using those photos, you get cameras in kids' hands and getting them back in the habit of things. And so even your best photographers are probably not going to be shooting as much over the summer. And so you want those cameras in their hands, getting them used to it, carrying them around, that sort of stuff. And so if you get them to sign up and commit to it in the spring before school gets out, then you can just remind them before school gets back in session, and they're like, oh yeah, I did sign up for that, dang it, or whatever. They're probably excited, but you want to kind of like think about that. All right, and then lastly, and probably most importantly, is towards the end of the year, I want you to really reflect, take a look at what worked last year and what didn't, and then I want you to relax. So in the planner, there is a space, and you do not need the planner to do this. You can literally do it on a piece of notebook paper. Make notes for what worked really well this year. Did your camera checkout system, it was amazing. It was so smooth. There were no issues. Did they really do well with captions this year? Did they increase their coverage like crazy, and the system you used to get that coverage was amazing? Make note of that because you want to repeat that next year. Then make notes of what you can improve on. Did you need to really revamp how students signed up to take photos? Did their captions suck? Do they know how to write captions? Do you want to improve on the writing quality, the storytelling, the candid photos? Like whatever it is, there's no shame in having a to-do list of things you want to improve on. In fact, I would say any advisor is going to tell you that they're not perfect, and there's lots of things they can improve on all the time. No one's perfect. And, making a list of what worked really well, you can repeat, and then what you can improve on, you can talk to your editors and build a system and work together to improve that. But also, like I said, just do 2 or 3. Do not make a list of 50 things that you're going to improve on for next year. The reality is, if you are trying to do all of that, none of it's going to happen because you're not focused. And so just pick 2 or 3 things to improve on each year. If you happen to accomplish them early, great. Then you can add one. But I would say that if you set out to change the direction of an entire program or publication, it's not going to work out very well. And then, like I said, I want you to relax. I do not want you to yearbook all summer. I want you to get the break. I want you to relax, recharge, refresh, reset. I want you to really go get that pina colada on the beach because you deserve it. You earned it. Yearbook or student publications. I say yearbook a lot because the majority of my audience is yearbook, but I know some of you are newspaper advisors or both. I did both, as well as photography staff and Photo J and J1. And it's a lot. It is not like other teachers. And I don't mean that as any shade to other teachers. My husband is a math teacher and we would compare all the time. Like, I'm working like crazy and he's like, my tests and quizzes and homework are auto graded. I don't know why you're complaining. And I'm like, it's not the same. So I'm not shading other teachers when I say that, but I get it. Like, being a journalism advisor is a lot and you deserve the rest. So while I say it's important to do all these things before you walk out the building for summer and you're trying to wrap up your school year and you want to get ahead on next year and start thinking about it, I don't mean keep thinking about it once summer starts. This is all stuff before that last day of school. Once summer is there, enjoy your sweet, sweet summer. You worked hard for it. You worked extra hours all year long so you could have a summer. That's how teaching works. Actually enjoy it. Unplug. Do not have your email on your phone if you can help it. And then when you come back, you'll be really recharged creatively and you won't be stressed out and you'll be able to really tackle all the things that you set out like you want to do. So that is all I have for you today. If you have any questions or comments or you have any advice for other advisors, I would love to see those in the comments so we can help each other. And then if you have any questions for me, you can hit the contact button on our website. It goes straight to my inbox, or you can just email me. My email is katie@organizedadvisor.com. That's Katie, Katie, @organizedadvisor with an ER.com. That's it for now. See you next time. Bye.